Well, I wanted to actually come up on stage while the music was playing and sort of try to do a little dance something, because the energy level definitely comes up with that kind of soundtrack. So thanks for that.
It's never too late, Peter. So
I like it, yes. The other thing I wanted to say is, before I let Chris introduce himself, is that I didn't have anything to do with like where we fell in the program, but I thought it was appropriate that we kind of do the like workout, gym, healthy talk first, and then we go on to food and drink with Ken and Mario. So a good setup for the rest of the afternoon. So with that, Chris, thanks for being here. And I just always like to say, please tell us about yourself so that you don't have to hear me talk. I want to talk as little as possible, you to talk as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. Well, thanks for having me here. Thanks very much for listening to me for a little bit. So first, who I am. So here's a pic we pulled for you. And kind of you think about your careers and where you have been and where you went to school, and so I can tell you about that. I ran away from home when I was 16 to become a cook. Never happened, but almost. Joined the hotel business at a very young age and really spent my entire life in luxury innkeeping. Have been married for 44 years, have moved 22 times in my life, have lived, I think, in every continent, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Europe, in the States for 17 years, have been in resorts and city hotels. And even though I didn't work as a cook, but I worked in kitchens, I kind of worked myself through the industry and ended up as the president of Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts, where I lived most of my life on a plane. And then met the guys from Related and Equinox, and they were going to do a partnership with us. And they were going to do brand, and Four Seasons was going to drop in the engine, the operating engine. And so after a few conversations, I got a call and they said, listen, why don't we do this in-house? And so you can imagine after 30 years with a great brand, you have all the social capital invested. And so we decided for a long time, and I had two visions of my tombstone. And one vision was, after 40 years with this great company, so-and-so retired, a little bottle of champagne, a few balloons in the boardroom, the speech, and then you kind of leave. And that would have been one story, and the other story would have been, in his late 50s, he kind of threw it all away and went from 108 hotels to 0. And I thought that was, the more interesting story. And to be able to create something that was different, and that was new, and that was innovative, and that kind of corresponded to our next generation's value system around what luxury should be. Having said that, I also have come to the conclusion that you should never be defined by your brand or your title. And I've seen too many people kind of get disappointed when they get to the end of their lives and they, think that they are the brand or they are the title. And so, I said here that, never let your business card or title define who you are. And I think staying authentic to who you are and what you want to do is important, and also reflects on how you perform and how you feel about your life. I live between New York and the south of France, Provence. I'm hanging out of my house in Provence here, as you can tell by the colors, wearing a Picasso shirt and just probably having drunk a bottle of rosé. So other than that, I spend quite a bit of time in music. I'm a hobby jazz pianist. I performed at Carnegie a few months ago. And so I do trios and have a lot of fun kind of with that part of my life.
Yeah. So. Well, I want to say thank you very much for sharing such a personal story, because everyone in this room is running a business. And so it's often, I think, easy to think of the sort of CEO as like all business, only business, and not really having a personal story or something that is separate from the brand. And I love the idea that you made that conscious, very personal decision to make a change in your life at a certain time, and we'll see where it plays out, right?
Correct.
So moving into that phase, tell us what the Equinox brand stands for as a way to kind of get us immersed into what you're doing now.
So think after all your life in luxury innkeeping and being a hotelier and having been around the world where you go from 50,000 employees to 2, and then you fire those 2 and you start pretty much at 0. And you sit in a room and you have about a year and a half to really put ideas together It's an amazing process going from operating and running businesses and creating and building, but suddenly you just sit and you do have one concentrated thought. And so we spent a lot of time making sure that we created a brand that was uniquely differentiated. And we felt that in the luxury and the lifestyle side on the hotel business, look 20 years back, there hasn't really been anything truly innovative or different. There are tweaks on it. You know, some brands do this better, some brands do that better. But so we wanted to do something that was truly different. We wanted to do a multi-brand that touched on lifestyle more than just on a section of it. So instead of providing just sleep and food, like most hotels do, we wanted to bring in something that spoke to people's lifestyle. And not really a wellness brand, and we can talk about that later, but a high-performance living brand. So something that helps you be the best version of yourself. And so the mission was, in everything we do, we create the possibility for people to maximize the potential within themselves and to be a high-performance luxury lifestyle leader, inspiring a connected community with personalized service and unparalleled experiences. So that's the mission we set out, and then we build the brand on that.
Yeah, we're going to keep drilling down into this concept because I think it is interesting to try to build something from scratch, and yet you are part of a larger entity that I think people maybe know quite well, which is around the gyms and the experiences in the clubs. Can you help us understand how that process occurred where the brand emerges from something that exists but has its own point of view as well?
So I think there were several pieces floating around the universe. One of them, I have pretty much all my life been a gym rat. So even when I was with Four Seasons, I would build bigger and better gyms because intuitively I thought that people would often stay at hotels more and more because they don't want to interrupt their workout routine. And often when you travel, all of that kind of goes to hell in a handbasket. So that was one piece. The second piece is, meeting the folks from Equinox that had 30 years experience in that field and that sit kind of in a category by themselves. There's nobody at that scale and that level with today close to 400,000 members that had the desire to expand the brand and understood that they wanted to become a multi-dimensional lifestyle brand. So if you go to a gym that is like a Gold's Gym, or it's a very different vibe. Equinox has 50-50 male-female membership, average age 39, 38, so it's a very different crowd, and it's a community that has kind of a shared value system. So it was also different for me to go and extend a brand versus starting a brand. So I thought people would know Equinox well enough that they would be curious to see what they would do when they built their first hotel in New York, which is like opening on Broadway your new show. But it hasn't been around long enough that people wouldn't be curious. And so as we do new deals, it's actually interesting because Middle East, for example, a lot of those younger folks have studied in the States. They've been in Boston, New York, LA, and they all were members, and they understand the brand a bit. And so it actually helps us accelerate the growth, I think, to extend the brand.
Right, that makes sense. I also love the idea of starting in New York. To me, you might as well figure out if it's going to work quickly rather than dance around the edges of the biggest and most dynamic market you could possibly enter. So I appreciate that perspective. When you and I first talked, I kept using the term wellness. I don't think that's the right term for what you want to do. I've learned that you're talking about what you're calling a high-performance lifestyle experience. I'm trying to really understand, and maybe you can explain to us, what are all the touch points that relate to that so that we can maybe move past the term wellness and begin to understand what the full experience can be, whether it's in an Equinox world, in our own lives, what's high-performance lifestyle, and then how do you make it happen?
So I'll make it very short, and I'll tie into this, when you go back actually one slide to this proof of concept in New York. Sorry, next one forward. Next, yeah, that's it. Yeah. So the proof of concept in New York we touched on. So wellness, I've thought for decades, was kind of an overused and a term that was very broad also. Everybody has their own definition of wellness. To me, wellness always had a connotation of going away for a week, eating carrot soup, going on hikes, sleeping a bit better, not drinking alcohol for a week, and then going back to your life, and then it kind of all gets bad again. And our brand tagline is for those who want it all. So in today's life, especially with digital having picked up and the speed in our lives, cities like New York, we're kind of always on, and that's okay in this world. But for those who want it all meant that you want to work hard, you want to have a family, you want to take care of your kids, you want to have a career, you want to drink and eat and go to Carbone and have this amazing food, but then also you want to be healthy. So have you ever seen a chef that looks like Mr. Carbone? He's like, yeah, I know, I do, he checks, so it's like 4% body fat, yet you have this amazing food. So it's kind of the sense that high performance living is you choose that what is the best version of yourself? Who do you want to be? You don't compare yourself to others, but who do you want to be? And there are components that are part of that. And so when we did the hotel extension, we figured that we wanted to create an integrated experience that was multidimensional, that touched on hospitality, that catered to travelers by definition, but also touched the local community, which most hotels do through food and beverage. If you think of our hotel with a club, we have 5,500 members just in one club in Hudson Yards. We have 34 clubs in the city. By definition, people want their club to be close to where they live or where they work. So if you descend from your guest room into the club, there's probably 300, 400, 500 people working out. The average stay people spend in the club is 2.5 hours. This is not a gym. This is a community. This is a group of like-minded people that hang out together. And when they're finished, they dress and they get ready and they go to Carbone, which is in our tower, and ZZ Club, or they go to Electric Lemon up on the 24th floor, and they activate the building. And so suddenly you feel like you're part of a local community. And that energy, and that done seamlessly, was our proof of concept. And so if you look that actually only 2% of our hotel guests are members of Equinox, which you would think maybe would be much higher. But compared to other luxury brands, where 8 to 12% of the guests go and use the hotel gym, in ours, it's between 30 and 40% of our customers, which means they subscribe to the lifestyle. But they're also paying similar average rates than they would pay at Four Seasons or Peninsula or Mandarin in the city. So that's kind of the positioning where we sit. So the next slide that you saw there was the brand pillars. And so as we developed the brand and the strategy, we said, we've got to have a clear foundation what that means. And so it was movement. Movement happens in the club. We don't believe in exercising heavily in the room. There is nutrition, which touches from the restaurants to the way we do the private bar, the way we reinvented room service to have an experience that was truly amazing, to regen, which is the spa, a high-performance spa, and then everything that goes in the guest room, from the shower experience to the bed, what's in the mattress. And a lot of this guest room experience is what we call quiet luxury. So it's half of the stuff we spend money on you actually don't see, but when you wake up in the morning, you can feel the difference. And then the community. So you really feel you're around with people that kind of have a shared value system.
I want to drill down into that a little bit more deeply, because I know that part of the objective must be to not just have these elements, but to make them feel proprietary to your brand and your experience, and to make it so that people can't get that experience anywhere else, so that you build the value of your business and your brand. What is the proprietary aspect of this experience?
So as you know, anytime you do something good, somebody else copies it. So that's fine. And I think what you will see is you will see brands catching up to some of those values. And you have seen already openings of other hotels that kind of start mimicking parts of it. You have seen some of the older brands that try to catch up, and they end up putting exercise bikes in the guest rooms, and so they're not quite sure how they should define this. What makes us kind of special is there is skill set that are reserved to running restaurants. There's a real skill set to do that well. There's a skill set around running hotels and rooms and rates and marketing and all that piece of it. And then there's a skill set around running clubs, and it's often people, when they think of a club like Equinox or a gym, they think they're running a gym. But if you think that Equinox between LA, San Francisco, some of the other cities, New York and London and Toronto, has almost 400,000 members, the skill set of running membership, any organization, is a whole different skill set. And one of the things I was blown away by joining the organization is discovering something I hadn't expected, that it was this entire team that takes care of membership and how that works and how they replenish. And even if a hotel would come in and build a 60,000 square foot gym that would look great, if you can't activate the space, it's like having a beautiful restaurant that's empty. Okay? Activating the space is a key ingredient to making this successful.
Yeah, that's interesting about the skill sets required to make something feel special and proprietary and actually work. We got into this a little bit earlier today when we were talking about the branded residences and just generally the allocation of space to amenities within a property. And I know for myself, one of the big challenges I face is I want to stay in this special hotel, but I want the gym. And it's often, I think about economics, isn't it? How should we think about the economics of the model that you've built here in terms of allocating the space to these elements of your proprietary formula, and how that works in terms of long-term with your business partners and others?
So, I mean, if you spend any time in real estate finance and you develop these buildings, the typical model for a hotel company is an HMA model, so hotel management agreements. So the brands come in, they work with a developer, they sign a deal, they get a percentage of, and there's a formula on how they then get their fee revenue. So they're basically a fee provider. But they bring in the brand and the management skill, so important. As a hotel, you want the space to be productive. So you want a bar or a restaurant to have turnover. And so the per square footage generation of revenue and profit is an important metrics to look at. Building a gym in a hotel is an expensive thing because if you think of it as far as when you go to a gym, you don't pay access to go to a hotel gym. You don't pay access when you stay at the Equinox Hotel, but you have full access to the gym. The way the club goes into these buildings is as a retailer, basically. So while we go in as an HMA, clubs go in as a retailer, so they go in and pay rent for 30, 40, 50, 60,000 square feet of space. And so as a developer, they suddenly get a tenant that is a key tenant that also creates footfall for these huge residential developments or multi-dimensional developments. And they have a tenant. So the math is very accretive to the buildings. It makes a huge difference.
So as you look out to the future of having conversations with developers, that's a component of what you bring that's different.
Yeah, they love that model. Yeah. Hotels usually don't pay rent for their gym space in a hotel. It just sits there. So that's a huge differentiator for us.
Interesting. I just want to spend a little bit more time on the aspect of this performance lifestyle because it's a different thing that we've talked about today. And I know you are, you call yourself a gym rat. I know you love food. Just help us understand, is there a personal component to the story that you're telling here in this property or in these properties? How much is brought to you by others in terms of consultants or other experiences? Like how are you developing these concepts and how deep are they going? And I'm trying to just imagine all these experiences coming together just a little bit more deeply.
So it's very simple, actually, I think. Instead of giving you a long answer, we have a very dynamic, very senior team in the group that owns these businesses, and they're my partners in the hotel business. We basically build this hotel for us, for our lifestyle. And when we make decisions that will guide implementation of policy or design or flow or infrastructure, we use our lifestyle and what we want and what we think people want, and we pretty much go for it pretty quickly. We're privately owned. We make decisions very fast. So we don't rely a lot on consultants or tons of research, and we just intuitively go for this stuff. And I think we all have been around long enough that we have kind of seen what works. Probably the only other lesson that I have learned from a retailer called Mickey Drexler, I don't know if you remember Mickey. I once met with him and I said, how do you design these, he was in his 50s, 60s, he said, how do you design these hoodies and sneakers for teenagers? What do you do? He said, well, my friend and I, in the afternoon, we get in a car and we drive to the playgrounds of the schools, the high schools. And when the kids come out, we kind of we look for the cool kids, and then we see what they wear, and that's what we design. That was it.
Nice. Well, I think I love that story, and I think this is a good segue into my next question, which is really, I think, again, getting back to the idea that everyone in this room is running a business in addition to being creative and and everything else, help us understand your role and how you think about your role, particularly as someone who's experienced in being a business leader in a creative business. How do you spend your time? What's important to you? Just break that down for us a little bit.
That's a big question. So I have a team here with me, actually. I wanted to introduce quickly for you. So back there in the room, there's Tara. Tara is in our marketing area and does a lot on programming. She just put together a whole sleep symposium. If you're free in the next few weeks, it's going to be at the hotel. I met Tara when she was 6 months old. Her dad and I I ran a hotel he owned. And so he was us in New York. Next to her is Amelia. Amelia is our head of design. I stole her from somebody in town. But she comes out of resi design and hotel design and brings a huge, broad knowledge with her. And then next to her is Gaea, who is from Madrid, who is going to finish her internship. They all kind of have master's degree in whatever stuff, but these are kind of, that's the future. And so I spend a lot of time with kind of the young generation, kind of understanding. I do boss them around, but like, what do you want to do? What do you think about it? So I think they have quite a bit of freedom to do, and so I would describe stylistically, our organization is very collaborative, very quick, and very flat as an org chart. We all sat together when we put this deck together. Credit goes really to Tara to doing most of the work. And so, being modern, we went to AI, and we said, what is the role of a CEO? Okay, and we took all the stuff you see on there that AI told us was what made a great CEO. And then 2 days ago, I sat at a CEO luncheon, which was organized by Russell Reynolds. And this was 3 Russell Reynolds people, and I think 4 or 5 of us kind of for CEOs around the world and that run different hotel companies. And I was thinking about today, and I said to the Russell Reynolds guys, I said, what makes a great CEO when you recruit today? And they said, you know what, 2-3 years ago, it was that, and they used that language, okay? And I said, well, what about today? And they said, well, today it's about authenticity. And it's about, infusing the new generation and the organization with a type of a culture that then whatever you do, you make sure you achieve results. And I do think one of the key ingredients for a good CEO is to be able to lead the team to success and achieve results. Because if that doesn't happen, then all the other stuff is not important.
If I could comment on this point, it's hard to be a leader with authenticity if you don't have a good sense of your own self and you're not authentic yourself. So when you started the conversation today, you told us a sort of personal story that kind of surprised me because I wasn't necessarily expecting you to sort of make it feel that personal, but I think that's part of it, right?
Yeah, at the end of it all, it's all of it. If you think of all of us at the end when we go home from our life, it's family, friends, and ourselves, so I think you want to think about that before you get there, along the years, and keep investing in it and spending time there. So,
if you were to pick 1 or 2 of these sort of like AI-driven areas of focus, is there 1 or 2 that you feel like are, that you feel especially aligned to?
Customer focused at the bottom, right there, and culture and values. To me are kind of the big picture things. Everything is obviously important, but a lot of the other stuff is mechanics. If you don't have that, you have nothing else, in my view. So,
yeah. We have a lot of design-oriented people in the room, so I want to turn our attention for a minute to where design comes from within the brand and where you see that going. I know you have a director of design who happens to be with us today, happily, and outside design resources. Tell us how the structure works in terms of how hotels are being designed today.
So not much different from the past. So an owner, the brand usually has a design department and design people who manage the design firm, who technically works for the owner, where that friction usually comes in, like, no, you work for the brand, no, I work for them. So,
well, we had that discussion this morning. So can you be really specific about that? Because we had design firm leaders talking about who they really work for. I think you just said that in a specific way. So the design team manages the design firm, and tell us where the ownership fits in, just so we know for sure.
So there's two answers. Contractually, I think it's probably like a marriage. You know, you have the theory and the practice. I always found that if you get along together, if you have a good working relationship and you trust each other and it's open and collaborative, when you have problems, which in every relationship you have a problem, you run into something, you fix it pretty quickly. You know, once you get to the point where you have to pull out the contract and point to a paragraph, you know you're in trouble, that you don't want to be there. So, you know, technically the designer is hired by the developer and owner. That's who writes the check, not the brand. The brand always says, well, we have brand standards and a brand view. Sometimes those standards are really silly, and I think they tie the hands of great designers to do really good stuff. So I think brands need to evolve. But I think it's from early on making sure you pick a partnership that is collaborative and where people can openly talk and develop concepts together. And I had that question last night. The team was on the phone with a Bangkok project we're working on very closely. And they said, how much will you be involved in the design? And I said, a lot. But I want to be clear about that. And then I said, but I want to show you where we sit on design. If you like all of this, then we should do business. If you don't like it, it's not going to work. So, and then we went through the design. It was very open, and I think they felt pretty comfortable at the end. So,
right. And you're, with respect to the outside design firms that you're hiring, is it a mix? Or are you looking to have, you know, a handful of firms that you work with more closely over multiple projects?
A handful mix. It's easier to go to people you know versus trying to have new relationships all the time. So I think we have a good group, a pool, depending also where the project is, and then sometimes designers are not available. So we have kind of a group. What we do usually, we recommend highly to the developer who we want to use, and contractually we have to approve who they use. So you know, it's this collaborative back and forth.
Yeah. And speaking of ownership, so Equinox is, and you can explain this better than me. There's a strong relationship and partnership with Related and the owners of Related, but you're also doing development work with others. So I think it's helpful to understand how these things happen and how it works.
So you all know Related as a developer. One of the biggest developers did Hudson Yards. Related is privately owned, and two of the key people are Stephen Ross and Jeff Blau. They personally have an investment in Equinox as a brand together with Harvey. And so it's all privately owned. So it's actually not Related technically that owns Equinox. It's the personal investment, but then it's all personal. Okay. So what that means is the New York hotel was a partnership between Related as a developer and Equinox as the brand and operator. But we're doing a deal in Atlanta, in Midtown, which is spectacular, with 200 rooms and 300 branded residences and a huge club and pools. And it's a local Atlanta developer who's been around for 100 years there. And in that case, Related does not play a development or propco role. So then they're just part of my board of 4, and we work together on, in a way, want to take the company.
Yeah, but I can also imagine it may be helpful to have such deep expertise on the ownership side as a partner without respect to who the developer is.
Well, they're great resources, and they're pretty good in coming in when we need them, but not being overbearing, which is great for me. And we go back and ask questions on a lot of issues where they have, deep knowledge.
Yeah. So last question, as we're running out of time here, is just we have to ask every session sort of what's next. And with so much in your pipeline, I'm sure it's quite an answer. But but looking back with your perspective of being in this industry for so long, what are you focused on as like the big thing next?
So it's growing. I think growth, and the right growth, but. If you look at that, we've done the hotel in New York. If you'd be a finance guy, you would look at our performance. We'd check every box as far as market share and rate, and so it's great. We want to do 25 to 30 hotels in the next 10 years. We signed 7 deals this past year. And the strategy was to go both resort and urban at the same time and go global. Because we didn't want to get stuck like some brands and like being, these are the resort guys and these are the urban guys. So the next opening is going to be on the west coast of Saudi, on the Red Sea, in an integrated marina concept with Norman Foster. opening next year. Our next property could be Bangkok. We signed a deal in the Caribbean. I can't say today where, but that's done. Atlanta, we bought a piece of land in San Francisco. We're just about to sign a deal in Detroit, which is going to be really interesting. There's a lot happening up there. So it's North American resorts, Middle East strategy, and then some Asian, and then we're looking at Europe. I'll be in Paris next week and look at a property there. So we're on fire.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. And congratulations, and
Thank you
thank
very
you so much
Thanks
for
having
being
me.
here.
Thanks.